Hola! We're halfway through Module 2, and I hope you're enjoying it as much as we are. Today, if you were to listen to boleros, you may feel that the lyrics full of romantic declarations of eternal love and suffering, and the exaggerated expressions of rapture and pain from traditional boleristas may seem over the top, what we call in Spanish cursi. So let's look at the idea of cursi in the Hispanic context, which has been equated to the more general category of kitsch, as defeated pretensions. In the Hispanic context, the word cursi would translate more readily to corny or cheesy, because what characterizes kitsch as a failed attempt to artistic or beauty sublimity takes in cursi a certain intimacy, tenderness, loving quality that suggests innocence and a will to improve one's social conditions. Let's not forget that both kitsch and cursi sensibilities are born in times of industrial production, where a growing middle class were shown in the possession of beautiful objects that appeared many times as reproductions of exclusive, expensive ones, the taste of the wannabes. It is important to note that we will say something is cursi only when it is linked to enjoyment. That is, you can say that a painting, a statue, or a piece of clothing is cursi, but not a hammer or a screwdriver. If cursi named the aspirations of a social group that wanted to have access to more, it is not surprising that the elites linked both cursi and kitsch with bad taste and negative connotations. The reality is, however, that cursi sensibility in Latin America expressed a certain emotional disposition that was, as Leonel was explaining before, marked by nostalgia for the past, new ambitions that seemed difficult to realize, and a strong religiosity that became part of bolero and the Latin American way of feeling. Carlos Monsiváis, the Mexican writer and critic, said, and I translate, "Our TV soap is a melodrama that moves to the rhythm of bolero." So to speak about Latin American sensibilities, we have to go back to melodrama and its enormous influence in how we, Latinoamericanos, feel and engage with our emotions. Melodrama is characterized most importantly by the central role granted to, particularly romantic, love. Love becomes a kind of divine myth at whose altar everything else can be sacrificed, and whose surge creates heroes and anti-heroes. Passions are ignited in melodrama. People are divided clearly between good and bad. Gender roles are fixed and conservative, and there always needs to be a happy ending. Melodrama puts feelings in central stage, depicting also conflicts between the individual and the context, usually one that demands desire to be repressed. Mothers figure prominently in melodrama, and they tend to take a conservative role as keepers of tradition. Melodrama looks back to a detail in the past that keeps coming back in a nostalgic turn that never ends. As we will see in the lyrics of boleros we will analyze later on, there is a strong emphasis on the individual in melodrama. The I becomes important, particularly in relation to character and temperament, as it conditions the possibilities for the quest for love. Melodrama tended to be very conservative, but it slowly started incorporating social issues and changes, as Latin American societies experience rapid changes in modernity. In melodrama, feelings have to be repressed due to social conventions, but repressed does not mean dead. So there is a theatrical element to this suppression that finds an ideal context in acting, be it in radio or later on TV soap operas. Both radionovelas and telenovelas, radio and TV soap operas, are said to have helped form a Latin American continental identity because of the exchange of popular telenovelas from one Latin American country to the next. Radio and telenovelas provided the middle and lower classes with an imaginary world where they could see themselves represented and where they had agency. Everything stopped at the radio soap time, and the same happens still today with TV soap operas. Listeners before and now viewers are drawn to these melodramatic scenarios where good and evil are brought to unthinkable proportions, where moral conflicts kill people, and where, in true melodramatic fashion, the ultimate goal is, and always will be, romantic love. The recipe for a good telenovela seems to be quite set and very successful in the case of Latin American ones, given that they emerged in the 50s and they're still going strong, even becoming an important export product to Europe and Asia. The main ingredients tend to repeat themselves. Love wins in the end. There is always someone who is not sure of his or her origins, and they discover the truth at the end. Good people are rewarded and evil ones punished. There is a family secret driving the action. And there is always an issue related to filiation, property, patrimony, and/or power. Irresistible. Bolero shares with telenovelas the melodramatic sensibilities that now define our way of feeling in Latin America. Passionate feelings have to be repressed, but they come out in the expressive voices of bolero singers or those frequent close-ups of the telenovela actors. Both offer a chance to let the guard down and cry. So, in this topic we talked about cursi and kitsch, their expression of a rising middle-class aspirations, and how these are linked to melodrama, telenovela, and the sensibilities of the bolero. In the next topic, Leonel is going to discuss the lyrics of the song Solamente una vez in detail. Before you start the next topic, we suggest you listen to the song. It can be found by accessing the further reading section on the platform.